Welcome to Orbicle Times Podcast, and hello to everyone, whatever part of the globe you're from or happen to reside in. My name is Kelly Jo, and here we'll provide armchair conversations gathered from interviews and research reviews to explore the seen, the unseen, and the in-between of the supernatural paranormal phenomena, with topics that circle around spirit orbs, NDEs, OBEs, UFOs, time slips, mystical moments, higher consciousness, and more. I hope that this cast will be our meeting place and judge-free zone where we can explore, learn, and grow through the telling of. This cast will be launched on a monthly basis or a bi-weekly schedule whenever I'm able to make contact with those in the know for their telling of. Speaking of those in the know and the telling of, have you had mystical moments or other supernatural paranormal experiences? Care to share on this cast? Then consider stepping into the light with your telling of, or send in your monologue for me to read on this podcast. Simply email orbicletimespodcast@gmail.com for a chance to contribute to this cast. Apologies for the sound quality. Max was having technical device difficulties, and on my side of the pond, we were experiencing inclement weather. That might have been the day that we had a tornado warning. Many thanks for your understanding.
And that is that at that moment, I felt that we were in danger for whatever reason. That I put my hand on his on his right shoulder, my left hand, and I said, "Colin, we've got to get the F out of here." And from that moment forward, I have absolutely no memory, and neither does he. I've asked him. I don't remember a thing.
In this 7th episode of Orbicle Times, Mr. Max E. McCabe is back for part 3. Listen to his telling of his post-2014 UFO sightings, which circle around flying orbs and cylinder-shaped UAPs and possible backyard Bigfoot encounters, plus his reactions, coping mechanisms, and words of wisdom pertaining to his experiences. Stick around until the very end for the bonus round with the telling of his sleuthing results pertaining to what seems to be a hotspot for UFO sightings. It's all high-strangeness, to be sure, on Orbicle Times Podcast.
So I'll take it back to where I'd left off. So we had those the first night, the second night, where Hannah didn't want to come downstairs and I chose to call her and not try to film it. Third night, got up early and was able to see it with me. We saw it together, which was a huge relief. I can't tell you how much of a relief that was. And now at this point, it was a few days later. So I was maybe a mile away again, a mile and a half at most, on the same road that's behind our house. And as I approached roundabout, I just happened to glance to my left. Something was out of place, in a really weird place. It was just a big ball of red light. Now it was enough to make me double take, because I knew that there was nothing back there at that low height except for high tension power lines that run along the railway track, facing this ball of red light. In front of me, is a one-story car showroom with a flat roof, and you can clearly see the power in the daytime. At least it's easy to see the power lines, and the actual pylon that the lines are mounted to was at least a good 30 to 50 meters to the right of this ball, just sitting a few meters above the cable. Instantly knew it was bizarre, and I decided to get out to walk closer. So I get out the car, I don't take my eyes off it for a second, and I walk around the front of the car, realize that my coat is on the passenger seat with my phone in the same place I always kept it, in the top left breast pocket of the coat. So I've decided that's not normal, and I'm going to take a picture this time. And so I opened the car door, still keeping my eyes on it. I leant in, grabbed my coat, pulled out my phone. It just blinked out is the only way to put it. It just collapsed in on itself. It just disappeared. That was odd, because it really felt like it was a nope, you're not going to get a picture. That was weird. And then there was a a bit of a gap. A few weeks go past now, maybe several weeks. Go into the back garden with our backs against the house, facing our back garden fence line. All of a sudden, a very heavy claustrophobic feeling just fell on us very quickly out of the blue and stopped. We both stopped talking immediately, looked at each other like, what on earth is that? Feeling of being watched. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I was feeling that, why I had a physiological response to something for no apparent reason. And the feeling was very thick and strong of danger, of claustrophobicness, and complete lack of sound. We were both freaked out really bad. In front of us, the direction we're facing, our fence line is vertical planks of wood, which have huge gaps in between. So you can very easily see the fence panels, and what's beyond that, couple of trees. Beyond that is the road. You can see straight through because behind those 2 or 3 trees is a very well lit, bright LED lights out there. So you can see anything that's back there, right? So all of a sudden, and we hear from the left side and the right side pounding heavy footsteps of what was clearly two-legged something on both sides, 2 of them. Yeah, like a boom, boom. It was almost something out of a nightmare. It just felt surreal because it clearly isn't normal, and it sounded so heavy. I mean, it didn't make the ground shake, but it felt like it should have. The booming sound of the weight of those footsteps on both sides, one at a time, stepping closer from the left, moving towards us, from the right, moving towards us. And Hannah got so freaked out that she jumped up and said, "I'm sorry, babe, I can't." And she ran in the house, slammed the back door, and went and stood behind me, the window behind me, looking out over my head. She thought I was being brave. I wasn't. I was frozen with fear. Whatever these 2 things were taking steps towards me, there's nothing visibly there. It's sound only, as if they're invisible. And even got up and looked over the back. There was nothing there. One thing that we've both said to each other is, why didn't we look up? Never even considered looking around. We were just absolutely fixated on what was happening apparently in front of us. And so that was that. Now, I think that was around December. Yeah, about 3 or 4 months went past. I have a teenage son, and he came to live with us. He was 14 years old at the time. Now I have my baby boy, Blake, since he was born in March. So I can place the month at least. And it was still cold at that time, really cold weather. My teenage boys moved in, and we go for a walk. It's rather flat, but you have patches of woodland, pretty small patches of woodland. If you go off of the road, you're immediately isolated because the one road that goes through there has hedgerows, which are very thick bush, and most of it, there's not even any sidewalk. I go with my son, Corbin. And so as we're walking towards the woods there across the field, and we're talking, I'm asking about how he is and, all of that kind of thing. And we were just about to step into the woods itself. He's to my left. So we were just about to step over that threshold into the wood line, and that same feeling fell. This exact same feeling that we had in the garden, me and Hannah. And it's very overpowering. It's beyond anything normal. It's not just a gut feeling. It's an absolutely overwhelming feeling, extremely strong. And my boy's to my left. So I'm thinking, why am I feeling the extreme danger, imminent danger? Why? What is in there that could be a danger? And my son says to me that he can feel it too. He doesn't like it. It's scaring him. That made me immediately realize, again, it's not just me. And the strange thing is, within a couple of seconds, that feeling of being watched, that claustrophobic feeling of that presence, which is at first all around you, you're absorbing this feeling from all sides. It suddenly had a direction to it. I mean, just bizarre, absolutely bizarre. I can only correlate that to if you've ever walked along the street or wherever you are, let's say in a public place, you glance over your shoulder because, sometimes you don't even realize why you're doing it, but you happen to dead center look someone in the eye that was staring at you. It's almost like it was that feeling. If you could take that and intensify it 1,000 times, it felt like burrowing a hole in the top right back side of my head. So this all happened in an instant, right? But I felt that feeling like it was drilling a hole in my head, but it was coming from up in the sky behind me, just to my right. So I instinctively turned and looked straight up, straight at it. And up in the sky, not high up above me, this black, jet black, like as if it was absorbing the light, a cylinder shape, was just beside, to the right side of one single puffy white cloud in the light blue sky. Even the cloud didn't seem to make sense. As I looked at this, it must have been huge. It darted behind that cloud, just like with the red ball of light months earlier in December. Before that actually, just like that, I kept my eye on that cloud, because even then my mind was thinking logically, rationally, thinking it must be a fighter jet, a commercial airplane, a hot air balloon, anything normal, right? The moment your eyes are laid on these things, it's immediately evident, it's apparent, it's clear as day that these are not normal. They're so unique, so different to anything else. I mean, a huge jet black absorbing light blackness cylinder that moves super fast was a shock. So I'm looking at it, ticking off what it's not, waiting for something to come out the other side. And I say to my son to my left, just slightly behind me now, I said, Corbin, did you just see that? And he said, yeah, Dad, did you see it too? I was like, what did you see? And he's looking up at it as well. And I think he caught more of it than I did. And he said it was like a can, like a cylinder. Now this is the bit I still have trouble accepting, Kelly John. All of it's a bit hard to accept, but there's certain bits that go to a certain level deeper, even still. And that is that at that moment, I felt danger for whatever reason. That I put my hand on his on his right shoulder, my left hand, and I said, Corbin, we've got to get the F out of here. And from that moment forward, I have absolutely no memory, and neither does he. I've asked him. I don't remember a thing.
A side note, I hope to keep this cast a commercial-free zone. In light of that, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Simply type into your search engine Orbicle Times, and you should see both my channel's name, Spirit Orb Sightings, plus that of my webpage, orbicletimes.com, which will also grant you access to my YouTube videos and other webpage content. If you've already subscribed, many thanks.
I have absolutely no memory, and neither does he. I've asked him. I don't remember a thing. Don't remember running, don't remember walking, don't remember getting out of there, don't remember exit, because we would have had to have walked for a good 5 to 7 minutes from that place, up around the side of the woodland, all the way down the farmer's field, turn right, all the way up the other field to the hedgerow onto the road. Don't remember a thing. Still to this day, it's weird, because my next recollection is being asleep on the sofa with the lights on.
Oh, wow.
Which I know must have been that night, but I don't remember anything from that moment to what happened next. It's the weirdest thing, Kelly Joe. Like, between me, Hannah, Chanel, my daughter, Corbin, my son, we haven't sat down and talked about what happened. We did back about a year ago now for the first time ever, and I had not ever asked Corbin at any point, my boy, whether he remembers that until I think January, December, just gone several months ago. And he's like, you know what? I don't. Like, wow, he hadn't considered it either. I was definitely deeply affected by it in a way that I didn't see in anyone else. I know Corbin was, actually. I can tell you how it affected him. He didn't want to come back to the house because of what happened next as well. You just come to move in with your other parent. Literally within days of moving in, that happened. He stayed out. I'm pretty sure he stayed out that night. I don't remember falling asleep on the sofa. Sorry, I remember waking up on the sofa.
Right.
But the lights were left on super bright. Time that I'd had sleep paralysis. I'd never even considered this myself as a thing until the last 2 years. I tried to put it down to literally just sleep paralysis. That's what I told myself it was. So I'd woken up. I absolutely dreaded fear, and I couldn't move. But I was hyper aware that to my left, I felt the presence of more than one thing. I felt like I was being stared at in silence to my left, and whatever they were, I was too scared to look at them. I felt like I could have if I wanted to, but I also was having trouble breathing. So I literally called out for help best I could, and embarrassingly, and I managed to force myself back to sleep, scared out of my wits. Now, that's, as I say, I've always put down to just sleep paralysis because of all the other weird stuff that was happening, the stress of everything at the time. But who knows? Because when you tie that into what had happened the day before in the field, near the woods, and then what happened next, it seems to fall into a specific category. I was in the house alone with Blake, who was obviously just a baby at that time, and we were in the living room around 11 a.m. Blake had fallen asleep on the sofa. I know I was sitting down on the floor with my back against the other corner of the sofa. Hey, Joe, I know you'd understand this. To anyone that's listening who has kids, whether it's a cry because they're woken up hungry, a scream almost as if he was suddenly scared from a serious nightmare. And it really startled me. I think I was on my phone at the time because I wasn't looking up or around the room. TV wasn't on, I remember that. So I must have been on my phone, face down in my phone. So when he woke up and screamed like that, scream cry, I immediately jumped up to go pick him up. I've turned to my right, twisted to my right, and it was at this point where I noticed movement over in the doorway between the kitchen and living room at the other end of the living room. Now this movement was enough to make me look up, and in that doorway, 3.5, 4 foot tall maximum, looked like the shape of a small child, maybe 5, 6-year-old child. And this gets weirder and weirder. The thing didn't walk. It didn't run like you or I would, where you bob up and down. It glided, but super, super fast across the room out of the open back door that was directly opposite the kitchen to living room doorway. I just jumped out of my skin. My heart skipped a beat. I've never had a fright like that, It gets crazier because Corbin, my son, wasn't here, right? I know he wasn't here. I hadn't told him anything about that. The next day, I'm upstairs. I don't remember the details of the day. I just remember when it happened. But he comes shouting, running upstairs, calling my name. I'm like, what's the matter? What's the matter? And he says, Dad, I was just doing my hair in the living room. He said there was this shadow figure or person, I think he said, just run through the room behind me. And where that mirror used to be, if you're facing that mirror doing your hair, then that doorway where that thing was the day before with me in broad daylight, that's where he would have been able to see back there behind him, the rest of the room. And I hadn't told him about it. So it was at this point where Corbin was having poltergeist stuff. He told me at one point something to do with the kitchen cupboards, but I hadn't seen that myself. I didn't see any poltergeist stuff happen personally, but Corbin did. One of the days that this happened, he said it happened a few times and he was scared to stay in the house. He would not come back. One time he was in the house with a friend of his and they were in the little office room, or it was his bedroom at the time. We weren't in the house. He was here with his friend. So he says that the door handle started shaking, violently moving up and down. And he shouted out thinking it was me playing a prank on him, which I didn't do. I don't do that kind of thing. I wouldn't have done that. And the door opened fully by itself. And it's on carpet where you have to drag it open. And he ran out of the house with his friend, ran out scared to death. After that, there was a very long time. There was a couple of small incidences where Hannah was sitting in the living room and heard a voice in her ear, which it came from the direction of the corner of the room where there is literally no space between the corner sofa and the wall directly behind. So, but very specifically heard talking in her ear, but nobody could possibly be there. I know one night I got freaked out upstairs. As a grown man that doesn't scare easily at all, it was weird how freaked out I got one night, and I had to come downstairs just because there was that freaky feeling in the room. And so just to try and fit it all in here, there was a long period of time, and now I can give you an exact date and the exact time of when this next thing happened, because I finally caught something on camera. Finally. It was 17th of July, 2017. If I remember the minute, it was 11:15, 11:17, 11:19, something like that a.m. And funny enough, happened to be looking directly straight away at a tiny black dot in the blue sky that was maybe 20 meters above the trees. In the distance, it was a tiny, tiny speck. But what was odd about it is that it was a little black speck in the deep blue sky, and it seemed to be coming towards me. I kept my eye on it, and it does. It's heading absolutely in a straight line towards where I'm at. So I'm watching it, and it suddenly dawns on me that can't be a balloon, because you could see the breeze. There was a breeze, not very much, but enough to move the leaves and the trees a little bit to the right, to my right. So I decide, as I have my phone in my hand this time, I'm going to record this just in case. And I'm trying to figure out if it's not a balloon, is it a drone? And as it got closer and closer, this little black dot that seemed to be reflecting a little bit of sunlight, as it got closer, I could see that it looked metallic, like a dark metallic color, but it was absolutely spherical. And it's clearly not a drone. I could see that with my eyeballs, and you can see that when I was trying to zoom in, kept getting, there was some bugs on the windscreen, which was annoying because the camera on the phone kept going out of focus. So, and with the bright light in the cab, it was so bright. When you're trying to see your phone screen to take a picture in a super bright day, and even if you've got the brightness up on your screen as maximum, it's still, the glare is so strong you can hardly see on your phone screen, but you can see it with your eyes. It moves up, moves left, moves up, and then it goes and sits quite high up, maybe 80 feet, 100 feet up, and then it moves back down again. During this time, I had to get out the truck. I stopped the recording, and then I started it again quickly, 2 other short clips, because I had to get my hands on the job I was doing. But I didn't want the other 2. There were 2 guys there, strangers to me, and it's an assumption on my part, but they didn't look the sort to care about anything like that. Probably I didn't want to be laughed at, so I kept the phone kind of hidden, trying to get this thing on camera before it moved off over the tree line in the other direction, quite low, so silently. So I finally managed to capture something on camera, not very impressive, but it is a sphere, metallic sphere, just hanging around.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Where do you have that up, Max?
I got it up on YouTube. I did put it up there. I don't know. I needed to speak about it or speak to someone. And so eventually I decided I'm going to contact MUFON. And I did get a call from the director of MUFON, Jack Turnbull. I never expected the director of MUFON himself to call me for the UK. But here's the weird thing. He called me numerous times. We had conversations. There was never any official investigation done. But I just appreciate the fact that he called me. That to me, that really helped me. It really did.
Yeah.
He did categorically say to me, stay off social media though.
Why? Why did he say that?
I don't know. I at the time, and even now, I kind of get it. I don't know, not fully. I should have asked him why, but I didn't intend to, but I kind of stumbled upon Twitter, and it got really, really interesting from that point, to be honest. That's where I've ended up talking about it so much that it's helped me a great deal, because now the emotional response isn't there like it was at all. but it's
Right.
taken a long time and lots of talking through it. I don't know the date of this, but after that metallic sphere, the last thing that happened back then was I was driving at night time. I'd worked really late. It was quite warm. I had the window down the A47 motorway. If anybody ever wants to look this up, it was between Thorney, 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 back to Peterborough on the A47. There's a little stretch of 70-mile-an-hour dual carriageway that's not well lit. And to my right, over that side, is just flat fields for miles. And this, wow, I mean, I was driving along and I noticed over to my right what I thought was a light airplane about to crash. These lights came straight, I caught them in my eye as they were heading straight down vertically towards the field at a great distance. I mean, it must have been half a mile away easily, because you can see forever out there. It's so flat. So immediately I thought, oh no, something bad. And then they swooped horizontally and started heading my way. They were orange lights, like amber orangey lights. There was more than one. And I was doing 56 miles an hour on cruise control, music blasting, window down, driver's window down. So these orange lights come closer, and I'm still doing it. Kelly Joe. Logical, rational mind saying, nope, all along the way until you can't deny it anymore. So I'm looking at these things heading my way and thinking, well, it's got to be a light aircraft, but then why are there no blinking, flashing lights? Why is it so low? Why can't I hear anything? As it gets closer, it looks like it's going to perfectly intercept my trajectory, which all by itself seems bizarre how that can be. Surely it's not. Surely it's something normal. To the point where I can now see that they're horizontally, evenly spaced, 3 large balls of amber light that are just traveling directly towards me. So at this point, this is all happening quite fast now. I realize that it's got to be something to do with all of this weird stuff. It's nothing normal. Okay. Because at one point I was thinking Chinese, like I thought that, and then there's no way. They just came straight down, swooped, and they're heading at me really fast across that distance. Then I'm thinking, should I grab my phone? Should I put the hazards on and stop? But it's a 70-mile-an-hour road. There was a grass verge to my left. If I'd have put this big heavy vehicle on that verge, I could have slipped down into the dike because it was a steep ditch to my left. And having this problem of what do I do? What do I do? And then before I know it, they've come so close, stood on top of that cab of that truck. I could have touched them. They were within 6 feet, 5-6 feet of the top of the truck. Absolutely silent. And I've thought about this too. It makes no sense about the size of them, because unless they can get bigger or smaller or whatever, must have been the size of, literally take a big beach ball, a giant, say twice the size of a beach ball, maybe 1.5 times the size of a normal beach ball. Quite large spheres of fiery orange light, just perfect spheres of light. I decided at first actually to write it down, because I was so frustrated, needed to get it off my chest. I thought that if I'm going through this, then there must be other people going through this. And if I can help by sharing it, then I will. So I decided to put it all down audio-wise, start to talk about it on an audio recorder, and I put it up on a YouTube channel, but I didn't use my real name at first because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't think it would be a good consequence. So now I've changed my tune. I think it's good in terms of helping other people that might be going through it. It's good to let other people know that I've reached the point where it sounds really obnoxious. I don't care what other people think. If they choose not to believe, I don't want them to believe anything I don't want to believe. I don't believe it. It's incredible for me. And that's the shock of it, is I've had to come to terms with the reality of what happened, even though it seems absolutely unbelievable, but yet it happened. So that's what messes your head up when if it occurs. It's the biggest shock of all, is it's so far beyond normal. It's unbelievable, yet real. So what does that mean? What is it? I don't know. For whatever reason, if you decide to share it, you're at great risk of ridicule and disbelief. I get that. So it's a risky thing to do. But you do need to, because it's the only way you're going to get it off your chest and heal from it. It does carry some level of trauma. Some people might say they only have positive experiences. That's great, but that's not. I had both, and I had neutral, positive, negative. But I certainly was affected deeply by it. Also, you don't have to let it overwhelm you. Hopefully, you'll be all right. It really made me look at what happened to us. Like I say, I would do things differently now, very differently indeed. The sleep paralysis on the sofa, I didn't consider that could have been something more than just sleep paralysis, given when it happened. And now I've heard so many people's accounts, and apparently it's pretty normal to call that potentially the start or end or whatever of an abduction experience. But I don't want to assume anything. I still don't want to assume anything. And anyway, I came to the window of the kitchen, and I always, ever since, look up. And as I came to the kitchen window and looked up, there was a ball of white light just sitting there. Not in the atmosphere. Not in the atmosphere. This was low again. And my phone was on the other side of the kitchen, and I thought it was all over and done with. So I think, right, I'm going to get the phone. So I go and grab the phone. I come back to the window. I'm looking up at it, and I'm trying, under pressure. You'd think it would be a simple thing to open your camera, your video on your phone. But I fumbled and stumbled and kept messing it up because I was like, quick. And the quicker I tried to go to get my phone open, my camera open and video on, it started to move. So I managed to capture it as it started to move away. It kind of meanders away. It doesn't move at one speed. But of course, I could only capture it for so long. And there was no point. There's absolutely no point filming just a ball of light in darkness from inside a lit room in a dark sky. But I've caught it on camera nonetheless, meandering away. But of course, what can you see? White light moving in the night. Great. I started off amazed and shocked and scared. But in hindsight, after all this time, I now feel like I actually want an interaction, close interaction again, because seeing these balls of light high up like that, it's just not, it's interesting, but it's not a direct interaction. So I come to the window again a few weeks later, and as I get here, Hannah's at work. I'm with Blake. He's in the living room, and right in front of our house, there's one of the many trees, and I see a fiery light behind the tree, and I'm like, "What is that? That shouldn't be there." And as I'm looking, suddenly into view comes a very fiery-looking, reddy, orangey ball of light. So I get Blake to the window, and he's like, "Oh, wow, it's fire in the sky." It was literally his words. So I was like, quick, my phone. So I grab my phone, I start to record it, and I wanted to go outside the house to get a better look. So by the time I've come outside, it's about 80 feet up, 6 to the west. Here's an interesting point, is that a man who lives in the bungalow, one of the two bungalows in front of our house, at the very moment I'm filming this sphere above his house, he's coming out of his front door, turns around looking at the floor, walks towards his car to get in his car to go to work. Doesn't once look up, and right above him is an orb. And at the same time that I'm filming it and he's just going to work, teenager passed me on his scooter and just is staring straight ahead of him with his headphones in. It just goes to show that we live in a world now where everybody's staring at their phones. Everybody's bothered about going to work, earning money, paying bills. Nobody really looks up.
At that time, were you concerned about safety of your son?
I feel almost a responsibility to acclimatize him to the possibility, because if it does happen, my concern is that if it happens and he's not prepared, if it ever happens, that it will be a complete traumatic shock like it was for me. So I've taken it in the opposite stance. I think that the best thing I can do is try to very gently put it in a easy to understand, in a gentle, easy fashion. Let him know that there are things like this around. Not telling him what I think they are. If anything ever happens, tell daddy, tell mummy, come and tell us, right? To make him at ease, just in case. And the thing is, he's 7 now and nothing's happened.
Do you think that there should be some sort of a learning tool for children?
It's a fine line, isn't it? It's But then again, you know, I see, this is why I'm very careful. I will never say an assumption like they are aliens, because I don't know that. That would be a complete assumption, and I don't like to assume things, because I don't want to make a fool out of just myself to myself. I don't want to trick myself into believing something that I have no evidence or basis for. I don't know what any of this stuff was. I can tell you that I'm as confused today as I was that very first night. I've gone down rabbit holes of thought processes. I've thought at first could be X, or it could be Y, it could be anything, or it could be something I've completely not even thought of that we assume is one thing. It could be something else. I've gone down many different thought processes with all of it. Ultimately, it comes down to this point. I have no idea what it was, and I don't want to assume anything. And I'm still as confused today as I was that very first night.
You sort of want to make contact with them again. If that happens, what will you do differently?
I think the number one challenge for me, because it covers two main points. And so I think number one, I would like to be able to manage my response and not to overcome that fear, if indeed that's how it feels, if it ever happens again. I had considered that very first night when I was under that, whatever it was, that object, the fact that I was struck by such an intense feeling of love, I had a couple of thoughts. Either it was a way of managing my response to not give me, if it was injected into me, so to speak, projected onto me, that it would make me manageable. Or that's one rabbit hole you could go down. And if you took that feeling away, that emotional love, positive energy away, then I would have felt exactly the same as the other times. So maybe those other times were just minus the projected love. What you were left with is exactly what I felt, which was vacuum of void of all sound, which by itself makes it a little bit creepy. If you want to look at it that way, amazing, but still a little bit weird. And then secondly, that feeling of being watched, that claustrophobic feeling, overwhelming feeling of being observed, of a presence, that was definitely there under that object that first night as well. So if you took the love away, it would have been the response, the automatic human response to encountering something so beyond normal like that would probably be what happened, which is automatic, hair goes up, fearful. And so maybe my responses were just automatic and not warranted, because ultimately I've not been harmed, right? So that's one thing. But then the other alternative, and there are many of them, that it might not be anything at all to do with people are assuming UFO or UAP, assuming so many things, alien, interdimensional, all those things. Maybe it is spiritual entirely. Maybe it had something to do with angels, maybe watchers. It's been with the human race forever. If it had happened, if that exact same thing had happened to me thousands of years ago, it's too similar to stories that you read about in Bibles, or I listened to some religious experiences that are in the Bible and of some of the saints and so on, where they encountered these kinds of objects in the past, and it's gone down as Bible stories. So my mind is open to all possibilities, but that's part of also the frustration, is I don't have the answer, and so I don't know what to think. So I can't conclude it. I can't put it to rest because I know what it is. I just don't. I would firstly try to manage my fear response. Secondly, I want answers. I guess I want answers.
Well, speaking of wanting answers, for the portion of that time that you felt that you may have lost when you were in the field with your son, have you considered some sort of therapy?
I did at one point. For the longest time, and I've gone back to that now, is I didn't want to potentially stir up false memories. Because at that point I decided maybe I should give it a go, because if nothing else, I told myself I would give anything almost to experience that first night, to relive that first night. Yeah. And I don't know how it, whether it's that real when you're going through it. I've heard sometimes it can be, But just to relive that, it was so amazing and mind-blowing without the shock and the trauma, the shock of it. But since then, I've spoken with someone else that has said things which have made me have the shivers, because I suddenly realized that because my childhood was my childhood, to me it's perfectly normal no matter what happened. So I've never really considered certain things that happened as anything other than just normal until speaking with some other people. Since I started to talk about these things with my brother last weekend, I've got to admit, it's not made me gullible, but what it has made me see no way a lot less, because now I can't brush things off the cuff straight away.
Maybe what it's done is opened you up a bit, or opened up your mind to different kinds of possibilities that probably before your events, maybe you knew about them, but you weren't that open or really thinking about them. Did you want to say something in particular to the listener, or any kind of message that you would like to put forward?
I think the most important thing that I've learned is that, and I'm talking to anyone out there who will hear this that may have experienced or is going through something similar themselves, or will do in the future, you never know. I'd like to say that it could possibly and most likely be really scary, and it's going to shock you. In hindsight, it'll be much better. Just try not to be overwhelmed with fear, because you're most likely not going to be hurt at all. It's just the shock of it. And also, I'd like to say that you're not alone, and it's going to feel like a very lonely place to be. So try to manage your responses. Try to stay calm, and remember, you're not alone. There are many people going through it too. And then what I'd like to really make sure people understand is speak to your local police. They will have to record it. The phone call will be recorded. There'll be a record of it. They will have to do something about it. And secondly, your local military base or air traffic control. So, for example, in the UK, MOD, I contacted air traffic control. I contacted police, but too many years later. And the police actually said, honestly, if it happens again, please call us, because
Nice.
we'll be able to do something about it. Yeah. But there are complaint emails for the Ministry of Defense that you can email, and at least then there's a record and you're trying to do something about it. So you're not alone.
Phone in for podcasts.
Phone in
podcast. Sure.
Exactly.
Okay. We only have a few minutes here, so I just want to thank you, Max, again, for being, so patient and providing such a fantastic narrative in the telling of all your varied paranormal encounters. So thank you very much.
Thank you again, and good luck. And
thank you.
Have a good rest of your afternoon and evening. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah. All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye, Max.
Bye-bye.
You as well. Bye-bye. Have you had an experience with orbs, spirit or otherwise, in need of a judge-free zone? If you've had an encounter and would like to be on this cast, or if you have a story to tell but don't want to do the telling, send in your story for me to read on this cast. Email Orbicle Times Podcast @gmail.com. Thank you for taking your time to join me in these Orbicle Times. Orbicle Times Podcast is written, produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kelly Jo, at Studio Spare Room.
Where I left it off last time, it was a sidetrack from after those first 3 nights, wasn't it? The reason why I knew it wasn't just us is because of the other people that had witnessed everything in Ash. Mr. Alan Hewitt was or is, hopefully he's still around, 83 years old. I discovered. I found his information off of the article that was online at the time from February 2015. The article stated that he had witnessed a UFO over RAF Wittering, 15 minutes from our home. And after I found his details, I wrote to him. I asked him for a detailed description of what happened, what he saw. But I mean, it was very nice of him to respond, and he replied pretty swiftly, but he didn't give really any detail other than explained that he had watched this UFO through binoculars, which came back every night for a whole week. And then we have a gentleman by the name of Martin Fitzgerald. I've been trying to get a hold of that guy for quite some time. He posted into a local Facebook group. And again, I don't really use Facebook. I don't even know how to use it. My daughter actually sent me a screenshot. She said, Dad, you got to get in touch with this guy because he's seen what we saw, the balls of light specifically. And this guy had actually managed to capture a photograph, more than just a photograph, if only I could get a hold of it. He said in the message, I'm going to paraphrase here, but he'd said, I was walking my dog it was gone midnight, Breton Park, 2018, by the way. He'd said that he'd seen these two balls of light dancing around in the sky low, and the third one joined in before all three of them shot up into the sky. He said, he asked, has anybody got a reasonable explanation as to what these things could be? They were obviously not drones or anything like that. I asked her to please send him my phone number and to please contact me urgently. And then, to be even more goings on, it just continues. It's fascinating. It seems to be a bit of a hotspot here. Somebody had posted to MUFON a couple of years back, I think 2018 again, maybe 2019, dash cam footage from their car as they drove at the top of our road going up onto a motorway, and they'd captured two pairs of balls of light, and traveling along over the motorway as he was driving up the slip road onto the motorway. And they were passing over the motorway from maybe half a mile down the same road that we live on. It's been fascinating. It gets even more. I've got one more for you because this just popped up yesterday.
Bring it on.
Yeah. Somebody in the Netherlands who posts a hell of a lot of really good UFO related stuff on Twitter, by chance happened to post images of very old text, 300 years old plus, 300 years almost, sorry, the year 1750. He had posted this message with the headline, UFO report from 1750 in London. I've seen that post, but my friend Ash, the police officer guy that's been helping me look into this stuff, he tagged me in it and said to the gentleman that, good find, but Peterborough is not in London. And when I read this old report of the UFO, it was actually from just down the road here from the year 1750 in Warrington and Walton, which are over the train tracks from where we live.
So is that like a mile away from you, or?
Yeah, maybe a mile, as the crow flies, as they say, in a straight line. It's no more than a mile away from here. I've got another one. Somebody spoke to me online in a local community group, and I asked him to tell me about his encounter. And he said that in, I believe it was 1997, he was fishing a couple of miles from here, not too far, still in Peterborough, a little lake with a friend of his, and they watched three balls of white light coming towards them. Didn't know what to make of it until he says that it, as it got closer, seemed to morph into a black triangle with these three balls on each corner.
Wow.
Each of the three corners. Yeah. And what was fascinating to me personally is because of the electrical charge I had in the air and the ultra silence that fell, he described the exact same thing to me, that he said put the fear of God into him, and he tried to hide behind a bush. He felt the electrical charge, everything go dead silent. His friend had a bit of a meltdown afterwards and never wanted to talk about it again. I wouldn't have ever believed that there were such things, but recently, looking into how many other cases are so close by, or experiences by other people close by, it seems to be a much higher than chance, level of happenings. And so this same Ash, the police officer guy, he sends me an image of close by Peterborough and surrounding areas of East Anglia. And it's a satellite image which shows the magnetic field. And it looks as if Peterborough is sitting right slap bang in the middle of a negative magnetic field, judging by this image. I'll have to send you it afterwards, Kelly Joe. It's amazing. That never made any sense to me because he suggested it before, something to do with magnetism. I didn't know about this stuff until he showed me that image. I realized that it just might have something to do with it. Maybe the physical nature of the geographical location, for whatever reason, makes these things show up. But finally, there's on the other side of the road, 15 minutes from here, from RAF Wittering, there is a low-level radiation dump site. And I may have mentioned this when we spoke previously. Forgive me if I have, but it's a company called Aegean PLC, and they put that dump site there. I think it was around the year 2013, 2014, something like that, around that time. So you have low-level radiation. People say these things are interested in that for some reason. You have a military base. You have lots of sightings in the area going all the way back hundreds of years. And it's apparently sitting in a magnetic, I wouldn't say anomaly, but a depression. Interesting nonetheless.
Have you been reading up and or listening to information about magnetic fields?
I've never watched the Skinwalker Ranch show, but I did take a quick look at an episode, and what shocked me, it made sense what Ash said, because I watched one of the guys there. Whenever something bizarre happened, he was on his Gauss meter, magnetic field, increased something like 5 or 10-fold. All sorts of strange things going on. But one thing that seemed to be a common occurrence is that whenever something happened, there was a massive change in magnetism. And it's interesting just to note the electrical charge in the air that was overwhelming underneath that, whatever it was. Yeah.
Did you get checked out after those events for any kind of residual effect?
I wish I had. I really wish. If I could, I would do so differently now. In hindsight, 2020, right? I literally didn't know what to do, who to turn to. It really affected me psychologically, the frustration of not knowing questions, the million questions. It felt like an instant obsession to the level of it affects my sleep even today, almost 8 years later. I never stop thinking about it. It's always with me. It's always in the back of my mind and often in the forefront. And it's taken me down a rabbit hole, down a journey. It's really changed the way I see almost every aspect of life.
So thank you very much. And I hope we keep in touch.
Me too. Okay. I can't thank you enough, Kelly Joe. It's been a pleasure, and it's lovely to speak to you. I would like to speak to you again.
I would like to keep this cast a commercial-free zone. In light of that, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channels. All my Orb videos are available by using the handle @Orb Sightings, or visit my new channel with the handle @Orbicle Times Podcast. If you've already subscribed, many thanks. For blogs, episodes, show notes, bios, images, and video, please visit www.orbicletimes.com. If you enjoyed an episode, then please give a like or a share on Anchor, Spotify, Apple, or whatever podcatcher you happen to use. If you've already done so, much appreciated. Thank you for taking your time to visit these Orbicle Times. Orbicle Times Podcast is written, produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kelly Joe, at Studio Spare Room.